Hey everyone, it's Stephanie here, and today I have a video to share a card that I've created as part of the 10 Stamps first anniversary celebration. I'm going to be using the new Fresh Cut Roses stamp set to create this card here, and I'm going to use my Misty tool because this is a layering stamp set, which just means that it has multiple stamps that work together to create one image. So I'm going to be using the roses on the left-hand side here, and I'm just going to use one of them. I just want to do one flower with some leaves and keep the card pretty simple. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to do the stamp layering as these were intended, but for the third layer, rather than use another shade of ink, I'm going to actually use embossing powder. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with the solid piece first, and I'm going to use my lightest colored ink. So I'm just using some inks from My Favorite Things, and I'm using the cotton candy ink first to completely ink up this large, more solid stamp. And I like to do a double stamp just because I like the intensity of the color that it provides when it actually gets stamped twice. So that's why I really like the Misty tool, just because I can do double stamping and it's really easy to layer the images on top of one another. So I'm just going to go ahead and pick out the second stamp that goes in this set. I really love these layering stamp sets, and the ton has a lot of really great ones. So I definitely encourage you to check these out. So this one here, I just laid it on top, figured out where it needed to be positioned, and then closed the door on my Misty to pick that stamp up. And now I'm using a darker color of pink ink. This is Razzleberry from My Favorite Things, and I'm just layering it directly over top. And you can already see the great dimension and realism that you get there when you stamp the layering stamps on top of one another. Now the third stamp would offer another layer of detail to this rose, and it looks really great with a darker color ink, so if you use 3 inks in total. But rather than do that, I decided to change it up a little bit and do some embossing. So I'm just using my powder tool to kind of go over that flower to make sure that that ink is completely dry. And then for the third layer, I'm using Versamark ink to stamp directly on top of those flower images there. And this is just going to allow me to go ahead and add some embossing powder on top. I'm using the Ranger Silver Pearl embossing powder, and this is a really unique embossing powder in that when you emboss with it, it kind of picks up the color underneath and turns into like a pearlescent, shiny embossing, and it's just so pretty. So you can see there as I tilt it in the light, that third layer, I have this really great, it looks kind of like a pinkish colored pearl effect on top of the rose, and I just thought it really added a real elegance to that rose image. And I just love what it looks like with the embossing powder versus 3 inks. And it gives the flower a lot of nice texture since that embossing powder is raised off of the image. So now that I have that done, I went ahead and created a mask for the flower. I just stamped it on some Ink and Dink masking paper, and I went ahead and put that over top of the flower after I cut it out, and now I'm just freehanding the stamping of some leaves. I was going to do it in my Misty, but I found it was actually easier just to do it on an acrylic block, and there isn't too much to layer here, so I wasn't too worried about getting everything lined up as much as I was with the flower image. So I just went ahead and did the same process. I stamped the bottom layer of the leaf with a lighter color green ink. Then I went in with the medium color ink and stamped directly over top of those. And then for the third layer, I'm also going to do the embossing like I did for the flower image. So I just took the third stamp, stamped it over the leaves with Versamark ink. I did use my powder tool. It wasn't on the film there, but I did just to make sure everything was dry. And now I'm going to go ahead and add that embossing powder on top. Now I did remove the mask before adding the embossing powder just because I don't want to have embossing powder all over the mask and then make a mess or risk kind of messing up the embossing powder on the leaf images. So I just went ahead and heat set that, and then I'm also going to get this great pearl on the top of the green, but rather than take on a pink hue on the leaves, it actually takes on a green hue. So that's why I really love this embossing powder. It's just so unique in that it provides such a subtle look with it. It doesn't really overpower anything, but it really packs a punch on an image, especially something like this. So it's one of my favorite embossing powders to use. So you can see there, I went ahead and I stamped my sentiment onto that little white cardstock piece. This is one of the stamps that comes in the set. And I also added another leaf on the side of the rose there. I just felt like it didn't feel balanced to me, so I added that fourth leaf over on the left-hand side. And then I trimmed this down on kind of a diagonal strip. This isn't completely straight across. It kind of has a diagonal design to it. And I'm just going to go ahead and adhere this onto a piece of green cardstock. And what I'm going to do is use this to create a mat on either side of this white stamped piece. So I'm just kind of positioning it right against the side, and then I'm using my Tim Holtz tonic trimmer. This is new to me. I've always used a tonic trimmer in my crafting and always guillotine because they're my favorite. And then when this one came out, I really decided that I needed it since it fits a lot better in my workspace. So I just went ahead and used that trimmer to trim this down. And it cut perfectly and cut everything completely straight. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere this onto the card base. So this is just a gray card base that I had stamped with a background stamp with diagonal stripes. And I went ahead and had heat embossed that with the silver pearl embossing powder as well. And this is just another example of it taking on the silver hue or gray hue of the background piece. So like I said, it's a really versatile embossing powder and it's just so much fun to create with. So I went ahead and adhered that piece on to the card front, and I kind of like how it has that little bit of a diagonal look to it. And then to finish it off, I added some clear sequins scattered around and then just filled them in the centers with silver stickles, which is what I usually do to complete the sequins. And then once I have that done, that's going to completely finish this card. I love the simplicity of it, and I love that it really focuses on the flower image and really makes it stand out. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.